awesome movie of the year, the only podcast that has the science and the screaming to unequivocally figure out what the best movie is of any given year. Before I introduce this week's panelists, know that this show is also a game in which points are awarded for well-made arguments, cogent thoughts about the film, jokes, and anything else I feel like awarding. The winner will be my best friend for a week and have gloating rights. This season, we are diving into the year 1996. And this episode, we're diving into the movie, The People versus Larry Flynt. I'm your host, Mike. I don't think I said that. I will be hosting throughout all of 1996, as it is my year. For some reason. It's been decided. 96 is my year. I know that year more than anybody else knows that year. And your first panelist of the evening. And everything else, you've heard several 96 episodes up to this point, has been bullshit because no points mattered then. But now these thirsty bitches are going to be trying to get it after me. And the first thirsty bitch you'll meet tonight is Greg.
Hey, Mike, I've come to smoke joints and score points, and I'm all out of points. Oh, got one. I got one.
Yeah,
okay, good.
You're no longer out of points.
Well, you got the clue. I'm collecting the points so far. 96, Mike. I'm ready to do it. Can I just say, already you're doing such a fantastic job as host. I mean, you're handling so many different responsibilities, and you're doing a great job.
Thank you. I'm milk feeding a baby rabbit in one hand. I'm taking care of somebody's baby in the other hand, and I'm hosting the show, which has several screens in front of me. So it's nice to be recognized, Greg, but I will not give you a point for that.
Okay. That's fair. That's smart. Actually judicious. I like that. You're putting me in my place. You don't want grade grubbing. I won't do it.
His competitor, who will see if how pick-me he's feeling tonight, is Ryan.
Mike, I'm here to talk about movies and drink gravy. And I'm all out of groovies. Gravy, groovy gravy in stores now. So happy to be here. This is so nice. This is so much better than when I hosted my show. We were at a different location. There was no AC. It was grungy, cobwebs. But this is like, you clean this place up.
Yeah, I got the producers of Love Island USA to just, like, they do a new villa. We're going to do a new pop filter studio every year. There's neon lights. So ignore all the neon signs encouraging us to bone. They might be left over from another.
It's like a Spencer's Gifts in here.
You don't have to tell me and Ryan about the new villa on Love Island. That's something we both know, right, Ryan?
Oh, yeah, we're Love Island heads. What do you call yourselves?
Bimbos?
It's himbos and bimbos. Were you into PPG this year?
Oh, peanut butter and jelly is my favorite sandwich.
Peanut butter and jelly with the G.
Is there a better PP than PPG? No way, man.
I have to say, though,
nothing.
Mike, I am so excited, and I'll speak for Greg here, too. We're both so excited because one of the craziest things about my season, 1984, that we just wrapped up, Paris, Texas, congratulations. The thing that we got the most feedback on was all the incredible guests we had. And so Greg is introduced, I'm introduced, and we cannot wait to see who is here tonight to do the show with us.
All right. Here they are, our very special guests. They need no introduction. You'll recognize them by the sound of their voice. It's...
Crickets?
Oh, that's a bummer. It's just a bunch of crickets.
This is the most guests we've ever had, Mike. Good job.
There's a billion guests on right now. This is a taste buds only kind of night. We're diving into the season. Let's set the tone before we introduce our listeners to a whole bunch of wacky new voices. And
it's about smut, so let's let the guests take this night off.
And actually, most of our guests are part of the moral majority, and they all said no thank you to this. What is your history with The People versus Larry Flynt, Greg?
This movie, I was very aware of movies at this time, and I was very aware of this movie, but I was a freshman in high school, so I was not allowed to see this rated R movie, and it took a few years before I was able to see it, and I have enjoyed it. I've seen it a few different times, so unlike some other movies where we have like a deep history with them, I don't really have a deep history with this, but it is something I had seen before and enjoyed before this viewing.
And Ryan?
Watching the movie this week kind of made me realize something that, like, we're not just film critics, but like probably 3 of the top 3 podcasting film critics of all time. And so you don't have favorite genres or favorite things, right? Like, we're open to all. We spray to all fields. We like everything. But if we had to dive a little bit deeper than that, watching the movie this week made me realize that if I had to pick a favorite genre, it is like it's Goodfellas, and it's just these like movies that go fast, they don't care about facts so much. They just like rock and roll editing, rock and roll music, and they just show shitty people sometimes being okay, but not really, right? And like Paul Thomas Anderson, started his career on this, and I definitely think that Larry Flynt, Amadeus might be this too. It predates Goodfellas, but it might be like the French Goodfellas. And Larry Flynt definitely fits in there. Like you just sort of you have like your little bit of moonshine scene, and then you just go till the end. And it's sort of movie catnip for me in a way that makes me feel a little bit biased.
So with genre, you don't even mean crime film or in this like a courtroom drama. You mean like the style of film there.
It's a subgenre. Like my favorite subgenre, submarine movies, yes.
What's your favorite sub movie?
Crimson Tide.
Wrong answer.
Why is it Das Boot?
Das Boot, man. Das Boot. We're a Das Boot.
Oh, that is a good one. I was
family.
going to say Down Periscope, but Das Boot, I guess, is slightly better.
You just love Frasier.
Yeah,
I love Frasier.
the pacing of this movie is incredible. Lately, it feels like biopics have moved into the, like, we're not going to try to capture the whole life. We're just going to try to capture a few days in the life, and that's how we're going to stand for everything. But in this, they have so much to go through that the scenes end. The last line of the scene will barely be out of the character's mouth before we're like into the next scene. I love it.
You see the extras running and changing their wigs to the next time period on the side.
It has a Shakespearean, but like back in the day, the way they used to do Shakespeare's plays, pacing, where honestly one scene is ending while the next scene is beginning. And it's like, we got places to be, everybody. We don't have 4 hours for this movie.
And I love how this movie is proof that as the decades go, they will figure out new fashions, but they will never figure out a surgery so that you can open both of your eyes. Crispin Glover is just like that the entire time.
It's nice for my people to be represented on screen.
The one-eyeds?
I really like the way
the one-eyed.
Crispin Glover is one of these actors who has just made it playing the same character in every single movie. He's like speaks in the same way with the same tone about the same things in every single movie that he's in.
Larry Flynt starting the magazine will be our density. Destiny.
Always just a little sweaty, always a little creepy, even though this character hasn't done anything that creepy yet.
And there's so many times where there's a scene that starts and your Crispin Glover's like character is finishing up saying whatever he's saying. And for whatever reason, it's always oddly compelling. There's one scene that starts and he's going, perhaps if we just switched the noun. And it's like, wait, what are you talking about? I want to know what is the context
Let's
of
linger on that guy.
There was a scene, if we're just going to get all the Glover talk out of the way.
I get it.
There's a scene that was reminiscent
lovers.
of Total Recall where the guy said, I wish I had 3 hands, where he was just staring at Althea in the photo shoot, saying, I wish I had 2 eyes. This is one of those movies, though, that like typically, and I think we've talked about this openly on the show, that we'll come in liking a movie and having it move up like a full half star just from the conversation, right? I think that's like kind of a common thing. This is one of those rare movies that I'm nervous about the reverse, that I'm so in the bag for this movie and saw some creakiness for the first time here. I'm not sure if it will take me down, my thoughts on the movie down a whole peg, but I'm really stoked to talk to you guys about it.
It is fun how doing this has ruined movie watching for us, that you can no longer just sit and watch a movie you've always enjoyed. Now you're seeing all of its flaws. It's like introducing a new significant other to your friends, and you suddenly are like, oh, they talk in that voice when they get too excited?
Off air, Mike is going to tell us who he's talking about, but that's why we can never review porn. We're just going to enjoy it forever.
Yeah.
We don't want
It
to
might be a little
spoil it.
problematic. But you know what? Let's turn our eyes to the man behind the porn. Let's take the quickest of breaks, and when we come back, dive right in to the people versus Larry Flynt. Our boy Milos is back for the 3rd time, now turning his unique lens on infamous smut peddler Larry Flynt. The People versus Larry Flynt collapses 35 years of the hustler founder's life, showing us his moonshiner beginning to strip club middle to the beginning of the magazine that led to so many trials. Along the way, he meets his fourth wife, Althea, but the only one we meet in this movie. You know, there's a lot of stuff left on the cutting room floor of Flynt's life, showcasing an irascible, problematic man who nevertheless has a heart of bronze, if not gold. No signs of molestation, racism, and violence towards women that Flynt had been accused of. But biopics aren't really about the truth, right? More about the story the creators are trying to tell. And here we get one man's horny defense of the First Amendment, as he starts to believe in freedom more than money, then ever so briefly dabbles in God and heroin and jail again and jail again. And this biopic includes star-making turns from Woody Harrelson playing against his type at the time, Courtney Love surprising everybody by playing Courtney Love, #, and a young, baby-faced Eddie Norton surprising this journalist because no one ever talks about Eddie Norton in this film. Taste buds, I ask you this. Does this ultimately turn out to be a hagiography to a person who probably, maybe, allegedly, kind of did way more terrible things that are not in this movie? Or is that missing the point? What I'm saying is, why make a movie about this guy?
I feel so fortunate to answer that question having done the two previous Miloshes. Like, I think that's going to help us out so much here in knowing what he is interested in. And
yes.
This is a complicated guy. Actually, he's not. He's fucking awful. Like, straight up.
Yeah.
But it's a complicated way of storytelling because we get to know what Forman continues to be interested after, Randall McMurtry and Amadeus and Salieri, what he continues to be interested in, how he has changed his filmmaking styles since the 70s and 80s. Man, this is like the perfect movie to start off with. And it's important to note, and like I think that, Mike, your question is extremely complicated because of who Larry Flynt was in real life. But it's important to note that at no point having seen this movie or liked this movie have I ever said to anyone, I love the real person Larry Flynt. I think he's a great guy.
Yeah.
That has never entered my head once. And I think that's important.
Yeah, I think the movie uses as a lot of leverage what a piece of shit this guy is. And just because they left out some actual elements of his piece of shitness doesn't surprise me that much. I mean, there's a few different scenes in this movie that I think almost lean into this must be this guy's own conception of how this went.
Right.
Because
almost
he does,
Wolf of Wall Street style.
Yeah, I mean, he does. I think he diagnoses himself as a big piece of shit and his magazine as disgusting and kind of awful. And I think we should say, for the record, he's a good choice of figure, and Hustler is a good magazine to have this centered around because it's not a fun magazine. It's really gross and awful and terrible. It really is even for fans of naked ladies and stuff, it seems like it was one of the most aggressively distasteful things I've ever seen. And I've only seen a couple of them because they are so
you're
awful.
You put it back in the box in the woods and you're like,
yeah, you find it covered in mulch and you're like, not this one.
I'm a horny
Here's
11-year-old
catalog,
and I would like something else, please.
Yeah, I would say almost if you're a fan of naked ladies, this magazine seems designed to make you feel bad. It feels like it's created by the moral majority as this is what you like, you fucking freaks.
And we saw
no.
We barely entered the crust of what this magazine is capable of.
I really don't think you can overstate how terrible it is. And I mean, it doesn't attempt humor. It attempts just being shocking and disgusting. I don't even know why you would want in your magazine that features pornography, why you would want some of the jokes and some of the articles that they have in there. It's really again, the only way you can put it is aggressively distasteful.
I think that the movie does a subtle, maybe could have been less subtle, way of showing how Larry became more addicted to the attention than the creating a good product.
Yeah.
The one major thing that I think that even if you haven't seen this movie, but if you were around at that time, let's say you weren't into smutty magazines, it's the cover of the lady going into the meat grinder. And that was on the cover. That was on the cover. But the movie makes a point of Althea and some of the board members or whatever you want to call them standing up to Larry and saying, fuck, dude, this is too much. I think that maybe not at that level, but a lot of stuff around that level was coming out monthly from this magazine.
Yeah, I mean, Mike said it best. It's you would find your uncle's big box of porn, and this would be one of the magazines that you actively didn't look at on purpose.
Maybe sex is bad, is what you learn from this magazine.
Learned and remembered. And the middle ground, which I thought was the extreme as a kid, and remember, this is before the internet, folks, was Penthouse.
Penthouse, yeah, exactly.
And Hustler makes Penthouse look like cracked magazine.
I think we can all agree, right, that like Playboy is like the classy nudie mag, and then Penthouse was like the kind of like more like edgy, but still almost kind of like, even the name is like, oh yeah, that's kind of Tony, right? And then Hustler was just like the gutter magazine.
Animals coming out of vaginas. I remember, or there's a part in this movie where they do the classic Playboy thing of like, oh, look, an article about stereo equipment. And that's always the shit talking on Playboy, is how you always learn about stereos in every issue.
That's what, when he's turning it from, it's like a newsletter to let them know his strip club has girls.
Yeah.
For sale. And they're like, oh, you got to have articles. And that's when he's like, have you read? Harrelson plays a very good, charming asshole. We're not here to talk about him yet. That's on me. Damn it, can I revoke Mike points? But I think that is part of that, and people are dumb. That is the irascibility of Harrison's Flint. I think you could watch this if you have no media literacy and be like, I don't know, did he do more good than bad?
You know, the figure that kind of kept like passing through my mind was somebody who is shocking and leads into patriotism and shows up to his own court date like in a diaper. I was like, man, how proto-Trumpian is this? Like, how many of these like really terrible right-wing figures that seem to be like embracing shocking and embracing like tastelessness, how many of them watched this movie and also thought of this guy as a hero and thought, I could do that. I could go to my college campus and put on a diaper to show everybody how mean everyone's being to me.
And at some point, the goal became to upset people, and now it's the libs, right? Like, we died on lib
trigger
tears.
the libs,
and it's so easy to do. But yeah, there was a role reversal at some point, and I think Trump caused it, and it just made everybody flip sides.
It's the new Southern strategy that flipped, like, that helped change the party, like comedy, quote unquote, shocking comedy in the name of the First Amendment has been taken because the rest of us matured are no longer 14. So it's not funny just to be shocking without a real goal.
And eventually, this movie does the same Goodfellas Boogie Nights thing that all these movies do, where it hits about the halfway mark and then everything falls apart, right? That's
gotta learn lessons.
You gotta learn lessons. First half, episode of The Sopranos. Second half, episode of Sesame Street. But at that halfway mark, it's not just that everything falls apart because we hit the 80s, and in the 80s they did drugs for the first time in history. But the First Amendment becomes the main character. And when you turn the focus of the movie onto Edward Norton and the trials, and although they deleted all the kids and the child molestation and 3 of the wives and the abuse, they used actual transcripts from the Supreme Court. And that's where I'm not interested in what Larry Flynt gets away with anymore. I'm interested in, like, can we as a country get through this?
Right, well, because courtroom drama, like, it's been done to death and done poorly, but, like, last year's Anatomy of a Fall proves it's fucking awesome.
Oh,
it creates drama.
It's drama.
It's so good to watch.
Crack, yeah.
It's why, even though I don't like sports and don't know anything about sports, I'm a sucker for a Rudy. Not Rudy, because Rudy's trash, but, like, a good sports movie.
The other part about Larry Flynt that I think works in this very effectively is that he is always angering everybody and is aware of that as like a reality. That's, I guess, the difference between him and I would think the modern provocateurs is he seems very aware, like, yeah, I'm awful. I'm just the worst. And then near the end, that becomes the fulcrum that he uses as like, well, I have to be the one the law protects because that is the First Amendment. The importance of the First Amendment is protecting the worst people, right? Like the worst type of speech, the type of speech we most abhor.
And one of the things, like an easy comparison with him and Trump, but I do believe that Larry makes a good point and Trump never has, is why am I always out here protecting your rights?
Yeah, that's a good line.
Because if Larry Flynt loses, everyone's life changes a little bit. And it might not be a lot, and it might not be in ways you expect, or it might not be your specific life, but there are people that you are into or you love or you're fans of or whatever that won't be able to do their thing. And he is out there in a way that Donald Trump never has been, like going through this.
Putting his own shit on the line. And I believe that he has I think 90% is he loves the attention and he loves the court jester character he created. I do think 10%, and I'm trying to base just off the movie, right? I don't know that, but it feels like 10% he buys into it. And especially, and I guess now pulling the real guy is, after the movie, this happened is, an Iraqi war vet, she got revenge porn, and he bought them and burned like all the negatives. And so like there are moments of like weird, whatever the perverted heroism in that. Like anytime he does something good, it will still be with a perverted bent, like defending somebody's porn. But like it's interesting to watch somebody be so ludicrous with their riches. He's a fascinating cat.
And like I just. That like not, and I think that you're right in that like he's got money and can do interesting stuff with it instead of just whatever people with money do. But I think watching the movie this time, I've wondered, the movie's so like quick and entertaining, and your actors are so charming. Why not push it a little bit? You had the room, you had the audience hooked to make him worse and still get your point proved. And there's an easy argument to say that like what they cut was because movies can't tell the whole story, right? They combined 4 lawyers into Edward Norton, and that makes sense to me from a screenwriting standpoint. But you could have not made him look so incredible most of the time, despite his like rascaliness, and still made your point, and still maybe kept a clearer conscience or something.
I have to say, I'm less upset by the way in which it might lionize him than I am the way in which it lionizes the Supreme Court, honestly. And maybe that's just because of modern events. But there's this feeling of like the Supreme Court, like this august body coming in to set everything to rights that I think is like as 96 coded as anything we're probably going to see in this entire season. But it is like kind of upsetting to see the way in which it like engages with Scalia, and it's kind of like, look at this, look at this little scamp. Like I'm more upset about that than I am about the fact that they made this scumbag look like a hero. I'm more upset that they made the Supreme Court like look like this force that comes in and really does just like, don't worry, everybody, the adults are in the room now. We're gonna parse it.
Honestly,
we're not like those lesser courts.
Yeah.
Honestly,
we have tomatoes and sour cream.
Somebody had to say it. I wanted, like, if I was a lawyer, I'd want to take my case to the Supreme Court just to hang out with them, dude.
Yeah.
They're a fun hang.
You get to kind of have fun. Like, you just, like, tell little jokes back and forth.
9 old man Muppets, just a bunch of Statler and Waldorfs ruling.
I don't know if it's, like, becoming woke since Trump was elected and, like, actually looking into how awful the Supreme Court was, or if everybody was unwoke back then and we all just were like, hey, cool, this is a thing this is an institution we can respect. I don't know if that's what I would have been like at my age back then, but it was upsetting to watch. It's like watching the Dallas Cowboys win. Like, this is fucking bullshit. Like, no one...
I have to say for myself personally in 96, I definitely like bought this line, or whenever I first saw it as a young person, because that was my impression of the Supreme Court at the time. Because
how else would they get there?
Yeah, it didn't seem like a group of people who... feel like they can divine the intentions of people from 250 years ago and then just like make sure that we live in the exact way that, you know, people with wooden teeth would want us to.
And I think that's such a big point of the movie is that, you know, the hypocrisy of title. So like, you're in the Supreme Court, or you're a cop, or you're the Christian, or the Christian sister of a president, then you are good. And if you peddle smut, then you're bad.
Or if you come from the mountains and sell jars of moonshine, that like you can't get that off you ever. That will always follow you around.
Moonshiner for life. New tattoo.
It was because I love
guess
how
if you keep carrying it around yourself, it does follow you.
The next scene after the moonshine scene is him like 20 years later in Cincinnati, and he still has a jar. So either that is fermented for 20 years, or he's still making it, baby.
Same jar. Not same liquid, but same dirty, filthy bar jar.
Thinking about how he was himself suspected of messing with underage people, a little weird to think of that scene in the movie where Althea admits to being underage, and he's
one
like,
day, Greg, one day.
Well, yeah,
that feels like the nod to it.
Yeah, and it's like, and he can tell. Like, I mean, like, if you're good at, like, telling if somebody's of age or not, that itself is kind of, like, suspect. I can tell from across
slowly
the room.
honed
Yeah.
that. I hate to call it power, but I don't have any other word for it. We are going to take the quickest of breaks and then visit a mountain.
Mount Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore. That hallowed bastion to the 4 biggest four-headed presidents we've ever had. All of them rode on a donkey to Washington. In my opinion, that's a reference to the movie.
Which movie?
Kind of had
Leading an
there.
ass to Washington.
Leading an ass to Washington. The People versus Larry Flynt, my good boy.
That one.
In the final trial. But we're not here to talk about giant-headed presidents. We're here to talk about 1996's scandal.
Is it hard to say the word scandal and not Scandival?
You know what? Why even fight it? The 4 biggest 1996 scandals.
Is that from Love Island?
No, that is from Vanderpump Rules, which I do not watch.
Vanderpump Rules.
Vanderpump Rules.
Though Ariana Madix from Vanderpump Rules did host the most recent season of Love Island
Okay.
USA.
Of course.
Shared universe. I think all these reality shows might take place in the
They
same
all
universe.
take place on Earth 1.
People think I'm crazy, but I think if you look closely, the hints are
everywhere.
there. So, Ryan, starting with you, what do you think belongs on 1996 scandals?
Oh, Mike, we could close this down after this one. I don't mean to hit,
Only one?
yeah, we could do this. I can list 4 people who were involved in this. I don't mean to hit slam dunk so hard, but that it hurts my wrist and my fingies vibrate.
Mm-hmm.
But Tupac Shakur is shot 4 times, and I believe his killer is still at large. But I bet Suge Knight
Is that a
knows who
fat
it is.
joke, Ryan?
Didn't-
That's not
wait.
funny.
Didn't they just very recently arrest the guy that did that? Or do they think did that?
I think it was based on too much Suge Knight information.
Oh, okay.
I might
I
be
would
wrong.
say
but
nobody should trust that guy.
Well, no, you probably just looked it up, so you would know. But I thought they at least figured out who did it and whether or not they are going to actually arrest him.
Same guy who shot Larry Flynt.
Ryan,
Spoiler alert.
back in the day, were you a Tupac fan? Did this affect you?
Honestly, okay. Let me explain what the world was like back then. I wasn't West Coast versus East Coast. I wasn't West Coast because I hated the East Coast because I love the West Coast.
Yeah.
It's because I didn't know what was coming out on the East Coast. It was it wasn't being covered where I was because I lived on the West Coast.
Yes,
So
3,000 miles away.
I was all Dre and Snoop and Warren G, and that was a universe away. But no, it rocked the industry pretty hard because this was when people were, hip hop was on the verge of becoming mainstream, and how it got where it is today, where it's the number 1, 2, and 3 types of music.
Mm-hmm.
But back then it was well, look how dangerous it is, and then this shit happens, and it's proof to the people who are complaining about it.
Yeah.
So it was a huge, huge deal.
But it's also proof to the kids that this shit is cool.
These people are cool as hell.
Because what do you have Rock? Rock was no longer dangerous and rebellious. You had, at this point, were the Zoot Suits rioting?
Dwayne Keith Davis has been charged with the murder of Tupac Shakur.
That's
How
a killer's
dare you,
name.
sir? How dare you?
They asked him.
3 names that sound like all first names? That's a
Yeah,
killer's
they asked
name.
him what his middle name is. They can't arrest him until he gives all 3 names.
Well, because I like tension. Tupac is on the maybe pile.
You do like tension.
Greg?
1996, the Olympics in America, in Atlanta, Georgia, on the world's mind. Unfortunately, a terrorist attack, a bombing. Luckily, here comes a hero, Richard Jewell, on the scene to handle things. But then people start saying, wait a minute, this guy's weird. He's kind of hefty. He's not very likable. Should we start blaming this guy for this? The FBI starts looking at him. They raid his house, and they don't really find anything at all incriminating. What they do find, and this horrified a 1996 Greg, was that his house was full of porn, and then they talked about it nonstop. Maybe this is particularly worthwhile to talk about tonight, but they basically pilloried this guy and humiliated him. And for whatever reason, I think it's because I was a young guy, the part where they ruined his life was like secondary to the fact that they particularly humiliated him for like how much pornography he had in his house, and they made that very public. Instead
of continuing to search for the real bomber?
Yeah, there's this theory that when investigating crimes, that the investigators will very early on have some sort of intuition, which they trust, which they should not, and then they get like tunnel vision. And after they have an initial impression about who did it, they start making this story in their minds about who the person is and why it happened. And so they had just decided. I did not see the because the movie came out about this guy just a couple years ago, and I never saw it. It was Clint Eastwood made it, and I never saw it. But my understanding is that they just decided it was probably this guy because he was the first person there, and they figured like he wanted the attention or something, and they just totally destroyed this guy, mocked him relentlessly, and then basically kind of with a whimper went, "Oh yeah, it's not really him."
But look how freaky he is.
But sir, you go out and you enjoy the rest of your life with a name that nobody will ever forget, and hopefully they will remember that you were exonerated, at least from the bombing part.
And knowing who Clint Eastwood is now, I wonder if he's totally still on the FBI side in that movie.
Oh no, yeah, I think it's definitely a movie about FBI overreach, right? And I think
okay, good.
And I think that probably the feeling behind it is like, some parts of this FBI can't be trusted. There's parts of this deep state that go into the FBI, and because isn't there like a big culture war? Like we all have our parts of the FBI that we like on the left, and they have the parts of the FBI they like on the right. As weird as it is for anybody on the
house divided,
and how weird is it for anybody on the left to be like, I like these FBI agents. Really? Right. Are you sure about that? Strange bedfellow.
And Paul Walter Hauser plays him in the movie, which I think is a
very good choice. Yeah, because then you're really working with the tension of that is a guy who plays very unlikable characters and plays characters that you naturally suspect of things, and so then it works, with that tension. Mike, this is like, I know this is kind of highly unusual, but I feel like I'm on a roll here. Is there any chance I could like kind of double up and just like offer up maybe another one?
Yeah. That one, I liked it so much, not enough to put Richard Jewell on the Mountain, but I did like your arguments so much and our conversation about Paul Walter Hauser that you get to do another one right now.
I get to just double up. Ryan, does that seem fair?
Sure.
No,
maybe speak up next time.
I was kidding, of course. Let's go to Ryan.
I was not. All right. Greg gives up his double tap. Ryan?
Oh, do I get to do one?
Yeah.
Wow.
You had to listen to me talk about Richard Jewell in the Olympics so long, you might as well get to do one yourself.
Dick Jewell, though. Hell of a name.
Hell yeah.
And my next piercing.
Mike, it's hard for me to remember what this was like back then. I was 2, but I think the classic question of we were so interested in whether or not we could that we forgot to ask if we should. We cloned a sheep, and her name was Dolly. And I was scandalized.
I was 4 and loved
Oh,
this
new
story, 'cause
Babas?
I was a little science nerd. New Babas? And because I was a Jurassic Park freak, I was like, hell yeah, this is the first step.
So Jurassic Park was dangerous, but Lamb Park? That's going to be adorable.
Yeah,
Did you guys think it was weird at all?
The horror movie Black Sheep hadn't come out yet, so we didn't know to be scared of the sheep, too.
Did you guys think it was weird at all, though, that the scientists just came out and they went, somehow Dolly has returned?
I did think that was weird.
Because the hoof that came out of the grave?
Yeah. Didn't it turn out that that sheep aged very quickly? Like it was a clone, but then something about like the telomeres or something caused it to age at an increased rate.
Benjamin Button.
Revert.
Syndrome, yeah.
No, that's backwards.
Reverse
Benjamin Buttons. Ooh,
she
that's
jacked. It is, and we're all going through it.
It just doesn't make sense that you start out so full of life and then you just get worse. You don't know how to appreciate being a kid when you're a kid. It should be the other way.
Yeah.
Greg.
Okay.
Other than the scandal of aging, what do you got next?
It's just not fucking fair.
That's not specific to 96. That is every day of our lives.
That's true.
It's not fair that you just melt in time. There are important monuments all over this country, and so many of them are contained in Philadelphia, a truly beautiful city full of a noble people. And
and a noble cream cheese.
Ryan gets a point for that lie.
Because doesn't that just push it too far?
They're not a noble people. I come from a trash, okay?
One of the precious monuments in Philadelphia is the Liberty Bell. And in 1996, Taco Bell announced that they had purchased the Liberty Bell and that they would be changing the name to the Taco Liberty Bell. People literally called their congresspeople and complained about this. There was a big brouhaha with emphasis on the ha-ha, because it was a joke, everybody. Taco Bell didn't really buy the Liberty Bell. But isn't it interesting that we could think that they really did? I think that says a lot about 1996, and I think that possibly it also says a lot about now.
I have to ask Greg, did they fire... Oh, no!
I did it! It's in my blood! That was the special bonus one.
Hey, Greg, I believe you could pick up that vacation thing on the wheel, and you hold that until the end of the round. Did they fire Taco Bell out of that crack? Because Taco Bell fires out of mine. If you know what I mean.
All right, let's do a little bit of speed round. Everybody gets 2 more, let's say. Ryan?
Israel elects Benjamin Netanyahu as prime minister.
Oof.
And I feel like that's been scandalous for going on 30 years now. Rough stuff.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Greg?
Worst thing to happen to Israel of all time. Worst thing to happen to Cleveland, in the dark of the night, their football team packs up and leaves. They literally did it at midnight. They put them into Mayflower trucks and they got the hell out of there. And went and became the Baltimore Ravens. Ryan, am I correct about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the people of Cleveland woke up one morning and their football team had absconded.
That's awesome.
Each of those
That's
Mayflower
hilarious.
trucks crashed into a Plymouth Rock truck. So it was awful.
Ryan, your final.
Mel Gibson wins all the Oscars that year.
Every single one they have.
Yeah.
Hey, Ryan. That was one less.
It was
my secondary bonus one. Is Mel Gibson wins everything, while Kids, Toy Story, and Before Sunrise are ignored.
Whoa.
And we didn't know then what we know now, but you think we hate Benjamin Netanyahu. Talk to that guy.
But we knew, in hindsight, Braveheart is overly long and not a great movie.
It's true. I called it Brave Fart at the time.
Oh, cutting-edge comedy. You should belong in Hustler magazine, my
Cutting
friend.
cheese comedy. Go ahead, Greg.
And Greg, what's your final?
In something called the Sokol Affair, a humanities literary journal, or not a literary journal, a humanities journal, published a completely nonsensical academic essay that just used a lot of like leftist buzzwords, and the idea was that by saying like discourse and hegemony, that you could just put those words into a paper and that they would get published as long as you like cited knowledgeable sources from kind of the left. And it totally got published. They published a paper that literally doesn't mean anything. It's it posits that gravity is a social construct, and it is on face value absurd. And this is a peer-reviewed journal, and it got all the way through. And this is the first of what would become many, many, many black eyes for academic journals that don't really do a great job. This is the humanities, but it is a big thing in science as well. Science journals that publish things that they have to retract. Science journals now retract like multiple articles every single month because they're like, whoops, sorry, that was just ChatGPT on one.
We got too excited.
Man, Gutfeld would have had a field day with that
Gutfeld
shit.
would have loved that, right? Gutfeld would have done 5 solid minutes of near humor.
Your Mount Rushmore of 1996 Scandavals is... Oh, I can't read my handwriting. The Taco Liberty Bell. Mel Gibson getting so many awards. The fatal shooting of Tupac. And the weird FBI thing with Richard Sherman. Thank you for playing. We're going to take the quick breaks, and when we come back, more Larry Flynt versus the people. Wait, that's not the name of the movie. The hack tag for this movie was that Cheers' Woody Harrelson continues his disillusionment of Woody Boyd while the movie just borrows the real Courtney Love's persona and story. Does that still hold up?
You mean the tension between like his good reputation and her trashy reputation?
I don't think it's the tension between the reputations. Is that at this point in his career, he's trying to say, I'm not just Woody Boyd. I can do other things.
Because this is
she's
post
saying,
MBK, right?
I'm Courtney Love, and I'll always be Courtney Love.
Okay.
This is post what, Ryan?
Natural Born Killers.
Yes.
The Courtney Love thing I remember so distinctly, and I felt it then, but didn't have the words for it, and I definitely have the words for it now as just absolute sexist bullshit. That everybody had just decided that she was like the 90s Yoko Ono, that she was untalented trash, and I have seen her in situations where, in interviews and stuff, where she doesn't seem all there. She seems a little bit fucked up. But to just put this stamp on her, like all of the villains of this movie do, right? To our heroes. Just say that, like, in real life, you are trash and always will be. And then say what an easy job it would be to play yourself. Like, I just think that time and history has proven you so wrong in so many ways.
My question is whether or not the movie is like, whether or not she is cast for her acting chops and whether or not she's cast for her acting ability, or whether or not she is just cast simply just to bring the Courtney Love essence into this movie. Because I felt like there were moments where there really is a lot more like look at Courtney Love than look at the performance that she's giving.
Is that like, why don't we say that about The Rock or Kevin Hart?
I do say that. I would 100% say that about The Rock. I don't know
or
about
Ryan
Kevin
Reynolds.
Hart.
And yeah, that's true. But like, that's what sort of a star is to bring that in here. Like whatever you are,
bring your big Hollywood persona and do it here.
Let me ask it this way then. Like, did you dig her performance in this? Did you think that it worked? Because she's basically this is casting a non-actress as the lead role in the movie, right? Does it work?
There are probably 2 or 3 times that we can go through where I remember that Courtney Love is Courtney Love. But what is impossible to take away from this movie, what this entire movie hinges on, not even like all the court cases that, you know, we said that are just so great for drama and storytelling and pushing narrative forward, but when her and Woody have a one-on-one, which happens often, it is some of the most naturalistic, like, Riz-filled scenes that I have ever seen in my life. And that goes from their very first one, you know, where I know she's a day underage. The scene where he has Rose Carter on the phone and she just refuses to put her cigarette out, and like they end up in like this middle finger war.
Yeah.
Like, if that was scripted, cool, good for the screenwriter, but none of it feels like it. I cannot believe the natural, like, Fred and Ginger chemistry they have on screen.
Doesn't it feel like a lot of their scenes, Milos just said, like, this is what the vibe is for this scene, and I want you to just talk it out?
It feels Christopher, you said Milos, and it made me think all S's should be like that. It feels like Christopher Guest-style scene writing. We're like, well, here's the goal of the scene, go. And it makes so much sense. And to defend Love's Althea, I think it might be, her bright-eyed and bushy-tailed day, almost 18, to her increasingly descent into drugs and Beetlejuice fandom. She plays so many different versions of a train wreck. It's not just like you can do one. And that is a talent. If it truly was like, I've seen Paris Hilton in movies. Paris Hilton you cast because she's Paris Hilton and brings nothing.
Yeah.
But and that's even if you ask her to be the same version of her, you know, like the whole movie takes place over the course of 2 days. And still, an untalented actor cannot do it. And for her to go through all of this, you know, and for them to put basically the entire movie on the line because of the perfect casting, not in the way that the press said it. Oh, it's perfect because she's a heroin-addicted whore, but because, you know, Milos and the cast knew she could do it. Like, now it makes sense that they would put the whole movie, you know, on the line. Like, I think that's how perfect she is.
I feel like it's definitely a stunt casting, but I feel like she carries it. That there are moments where you feel that this is a non-conventional performance, but not where it drops to the level of like, this ruins it. Although I do think there are kind of a couple of performances in the movie that are stunty. The casting is stunty and the performances are just too bad to actually be in a Hollywood movie. I just don't think it's hers.
They said for Althea, we want to do stunt casting, and it's come down to Courtney Love or Bigfoot the monster truck. And I think that they made the right choice.
But if there's like the Eric Stoltz cut where we at least get a scene of Bigfoot as Althea, I would like to see that.
Althea, I love you.
He's just ogling Bigfoot as Bigfoot spreads its back 2 tires. Okay, so Greg, overall, because I was going to ask, because you seemed kind of down on her, if you do think she was the right call, or if you think there's an actress of the time that you would have done better.
I think that it's an issue that you explore as a viewer of the movie who knows about the stories of early 1990s. I don't know what it would be like for like someone who's born in 1998 to watch this movie. And maybe they're not, but I have to say it's something that I thought about, and because I was thinking about it, it made me wonder, was this a bad move? And I do think there are a couple elements of the performance that don't 100% work. I think that sometimes when she's speechifying, she doesn't quite get there. But ultimately, I do think that what you said about the idea of when she and Woody Harrelson, I want to say are on the screen together, but honestly, Milos, he does a good job with one-shots of making the conversation feel very like organic and that people are in the same spot, even though it really is like cutting between 2 different shots where they're not in frame together, which I find is hard to do, like to get real connectedness when you don't actually have both figures in the same shots that much. But they do such a good job bouncing off each other, and the improvisational nature of those scenes and the fact that she does do her part to carry them, I think ultimately you consider it, but you come down with the opinion of, yes, she does successfully do a good job in this movie.
And it's shown at the end, she's dead, spoilers, and she's there but not there because he's just watching a tape. This is how the movie ends, almost like The Social Network, where he just is clicking on Rooney Mara's over and over. Like, so it feels like Milos is trying to tie a still living person's life together, which is hard to do, and saying it was always about Althea, not all the attention or the smut peddling. It was Althea the whole time.
Yeah, it was like a real love, or, you know, he says, I only regret one thing.
Yeah.
And then it's clear that thing is like that she became addicted to drugs and then died as a result.
Which he, and I would say Woody's most hollow scene, said, no, I'm off. I don't hurt anymore. Why would I take drugs? Like, dude.
Bane doesn't need drugs.
And then his lawyer keeps being like, my client is on drugs. And he keeps acting like he's on drugs.
Yeah.
But the movie feels like very much like, nah, he just woke up one day and he was like, no, thank you to drugs anymore.
There's a scene.
Where does...
Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Ryan.
No,
I was changing subjects, so...
There's a scene where it seems like it might be Althea's first time using heroin. And when she sits down with it, I was like, that's not how you use heroin. No, you know what? She would probably know. Like, she's probably got it.
Got it.
And she does it because he's passed out, right? If you're going to steal patients' drugs, make sure they're passed out.
Wait for him to pass out.
But he's not, and he opens one eye, Crispin Glover style, and looks over like, wonder if I'm going to have to worry about this later.
Yeah, he's like, well, the second chapter of my life will take a dark turn now.
Hope the 80s aren't coming soon.
Where does Woody fit in, like, zoomed out zeitgeist-wise? Is he underrated as, like, one of the stars of our lifetime, or is he exactly where he should be?
I do not say this lightly. And, in fact, I am overstating it. So I need you to subtract, like, half of what I'm about to say, just as I say it. But I would definitely put him on that Philip Seymour Hoffman pedestal of you can lead and bring new stuff to the character as a leading man that we never would have seen before, and also be the perfect character actor. Nobody, you brought up Woody Boyd, Mike, from Cheers in the question, but that's what people were talking about then. Nobody talks about that now. Nobody watches fucking True Detective or anything that he's in. And
Rampart.
Rampart. Like, he is a very strange, very interesting guy, and that is all through the screen. And we could sort of nitpick Althea's performance or wonder if it was a, star of the time, an acting star of the time, what that would have been like. Woody Harrelson is, like, I'm ready to shut the books on Best Actor of the Year right here, right now, in the first episode of 1996.
Can I tell you one thing I was impressed with? He obviously spent a lot of time in a wheelchair, because it's not easy to move a wheelchair with somebody in your lap. the way he does. Like, he obviously built up his arms and learned how to be in a wheelchair because that becomes a major part of the character, the way he wheels around, like the way he wheels out of scenes, the way he wheels Althea into the bathroom in like a gentlemanly way in their last moments together. And he builds the voice. Like,
yes,
Larry Flynt was a figure in the 90s that would occasionally you'd be aware of, right? Because he was always he was always courting this infamy, and he had that very distinct voice. And so you see Woody Harrelson go from what the voice sounds like before he has been paralyzed, and then what the voice becomes afterwards. And there's a moment that is almost too much, but I think works, which is the second he gets shot, he actually does the voice.
Yeah.
He's like, oh,
the mutation scene.
I think it does kind of work.
I had a flash, like a 10-minute flash of thinking. I was like, he just decided to start doing an accent this far into the movie. What the fuck? And then it was like, wait, paralysis. Okay, like, but it was a slow turning of gears of like, okay, a little Oscar scenery chewing.
Yeah, I think you've seen Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves too recently, and that's why you're saying that. I think that
nobody should have accents ever.
Based on this episode of this podcast, you can, by me and Mike's perfect impressions, even if you haven't seen the movie, you know that he sounds exactly like me and Mike's perfect impressions of Bane. And
with a little bit of Jimmy Stewart in there, right?
Oh yeah.
Vagina has as much personality as her face.
Why do we have all these
Throw a
kids?
lasso around it and bring it over to you?
Those impressions notes, we gotta get out of here.
Concurrent impression.
Take off corks, what we like to call the quickest of breaks. And when we come back, play a little game. 1996 was such a different time than today, where we are but drowning in a franchise. It is rare that a movie is unfranchised. Everything is a sequel or connected or shared somehow.
It's rare that a
These days.
franchise will take the quickest of breaks.
Franchises rarely. Yeah, now they pump them out because otherwise Marvel will be able to buy that back. So you can't take a quickest of breaks. You have to keep making these schlocky, stupid shits. But not in a fun way stupid. Like real agonizingly, boringly bad. But 96 was different. But there were franchises either going strong, either going or just starting. So what we're going to do is talk about the franchise then and what its future is in our modern day and age.
2024.
2020. God, we're so old.
That
what
seems
an
wrong.
old year. What a stupid old year. Let's start. For the reason for this season, and by that I mean the season of movie year, it is a movie I like to call Scream.
Right. Should we dive in?
Let's dive right in.
I thought the future was so bright for this franchise that it would borderline have to wear shades. And then so many things have happened. They lowered the paycheck for their biggest star. I mean,
Big
franchise's
mistake.
biggest star. And then got a bunch of slack for that. But what happened is right when the Israel-Palestine thing was just starting to creak up again, if one of their famous actors had commented about it, they got fired immediately. And that might have been a little too soon, especially for the core audience of Scream, who does not believe the things that necessarily studio heads believe.
It was a weird move. And then Ortega was like, oh, if she's going, I never seemed like I wanted to be here.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's just my face and how I act and what I get cast for, but I'm out.
Her career blew up after one Scream movie, much like your Matthew Lillard's.
Yes.
And so she was like, I don't know if you need this more than me. So, and I don't know if they hired Melissa. I'll look that up. But I don't think they hired her back. They're just rewriting the script.
No, there's moving on. They said, what else you have to do in your career? And Jenna Ortega, like Matthew Lillard, said, but wait.
How many good Scream movies are there? Because I feel like one is obviously very good. Two is okay, right?
Yeah, I think there's 3 good Scream movies.
Okay. And
there's one great.
How about this? There's one all-timer.
Yeah.
Yes. But 1, 2, and New York. Ghostface Takes Manhattan, I think are all watchable. I think 3, 4, and 5 are pretty... What's interesting is they're all bad in their own ways. They're not all bad in the same way. But at this point, it no longer is making fun of or commenting on horror. It's the Ouroboros, and it's
just Scream.
It's just
The
Scream on Scream and
Ouroboros.
Scream. And to the point where they're like, there's so many Stab movies, but in Stab there's like 12 and he's like a demon. I'm like, give me that Scream movie for real.
Nobody
Do it,
else
you
wants
bitches.
that, dude. See, this is what's hard. Like,
Go long legs.
because you're an audience of one. I think, and again, Mike is more the expert, which is why I interrupted him as fast as I did. That even 2 is like a copy of a copy, and then from there, I saw 5. I saw 1, 2, 5, and 5 was okay. 6 was okay. There's one. I would say there's one all-timer and maybe one good, solid good one.
And he's sitting on which one's which. I love it.
No, the first one. Like, there's only
Yes.
one all-timer, and that is also the one that is maybe the only
Good.
like actual good one.
No, but I think this is what makes 2 good is, one, I think the set pieces are still great. Timothy Olyphant's great. But
Laurie Metcalf, right?
Laurie Metcalf, she could ant my Jackie, is... Does that mean anything?
To you.
That's when the gimmick worked of the copy of a copy, because it did it knowingly, and it was the first time the copy copied. And it didn't multiplicity out yet, which the rest of them would start to. So what do we think? The Neve Campbell is back, and she's leading the charge again. How's Scream going to do?
I'm selling stock. If that is this game.
Yeah. Let's see. We're buying or selling now.
Yeah, I'm gonna sell stock because I think that there are franchises that have started when Gen Z became movie-going people. So, like, Smile 2 might do better than Scream 7,
That'd be a bummer
Yeah.
because Smile sucks.
Also, I feel like you can't underestimate how much the kids don't like what's going on
Yeah.
in Gaza right now. Like, I think that, like, people, like, so I think that this movie's going to have to deal with the legacy of the fact that they
I
put their
heard
thumb in.
they're unfortunately fully embracing it, and the new Ghostface is going to be somebody from Gaza escaped, and is after Neve Campbell.
Gaza face. And, like, the thing is too is that, like, Marissa Barrero, supported Palestine, or just said that, like, innocent people shouldn't be murdered in Palestine.
Also, what she said was not inflammatory. Even if you
Yeah.
were very pro-Israel, it was not an inflammatory statement. She was like, innocent people probably shouldn't be killed.
We're just here at this podcast. We're pro-innocent people. I'll just leave it there. People are looking, and not just Gen Z, but all ages are looking for any excuse to stay home. So
Yeah.
if that's the one they come up with, that's the one they're going to use. It's not like pro-Israel people are going to go see this movie. They're also going to stay home. So I'm a little nervous.
All right, let's move on to the biggest movie in theaters right now is not this one, but it is, because it's Deadpool versus Wolverine, but it is Twisters. Who knew Twister would become a franchise? 1996, Bill Paxton, Helen Hunt, thriller? Nature thriller? What do you call this? Disaster movie, I guess?
Disaster movie. Are we doing a Twister show? Oh, no, we're not.
We're not.
Who
I-
decided that?
It got kicked out.
When we find the 3 guys responsible for why there's no
I'm going to rough them
Twister.
up.
It is a little bit of a shame because I think Twister, in the cultural memory, Twister is just a joke of a movie.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like nonstop wall-to-the-wall entertainment. It's not dumb, but it's also not exclusively dumb. There's good music and good acting and Helen Hunt.
I mean, there's 20 actors I've heard of. I don't know, like, it's a tornado. That's scary. Like, I don't know why.
Yeah.
And it's Jan de Bont, who is, like, off speed. This is in between the speeds. So, like, he was at his peak. I think it's super tight, fun movie.
I will say they undercut how scary the tornadoes are because there's several times where the tornado is right above main characters and they're just like, hang on tight. And
Well,
that
they were spinning around the opposite way.
Well, the prequel also, if you saw the animated, the Anna
the
Twister.
prequel.
The Anna Twister DVD shows that they are just constantly in the gym lifting, which is why they can have that grip strength.
How many animated shorts were on the Anna Twister?
It was 17.
17 is so many. Did you guys watch Twistales?
Tomorrow.
Really?
Yeah, literally tomorrow going. Have my tickets. Didn't need to buy them, but did.
I have tried to manufacture some sort of interest in it and have been completely unable to. Like, I'm like, I should want to see this, right? And I just can't get there.
Look, unless the filmmakers learn that disaster movies are back, it doesn't have to be specifically tornadoes. I'm buying on Twisters. Like, I haven't heard a single bad word about it. I was underwhelmed. Mike, I think you will be too, because once I say an opinion, that is yours as well.
Mm-hmm.
But Twisters Cubed is coming. I'm buying it. Yeah, I figured that was coming.
Took me a second to realize I was being insulted.
I'm going to sell because I haven't heard anything really good about Twisters, and there was a lot of hubbub about how it does not include the words climate change and the idea that you would make a weather disaster movie.
Yeah.
Also, at the end, Mike is going to see it tomorrow, so I won't spoil it.
Ah, dang. Yeah, don't spoil the end of Twisters.
There's something that happens at the end that's pretty crazy.
There's Twisters.
Twister Sisters.
Mike, can you take your headphones off real quick? They solve tornadoes. They invent the thing that solves them.
Anti-tornado gun?
Yeah, so
That
maybe I'm going to sell. Mike, I'm selling.
All right.
Yeah. When
And
he told
before
me
you were
the
buying.
end, he also reflected on the end. And then he was like, you know what, I'm
Wait.
done.
All right, I'm going to do 2 speed ones that you just have to say buy or sell, both of them fast, and then we're going to... Or 3 speed ones, and then we'll just sit on another one. Independence Day, buy or sell.
Sell. No, yeah, that franchise is done.
Space Jam, buy or sell.
Buy.
Sell hard.
I think buy. Like, I think that if Victor Wembanyama, becomes a little bit more of a household name, why not? Space Jam 2 or Space Jam Legacy, what is it
The
called?
new Legacy?
Was enough of a hit where and plus I think we were shut down then. So if they can release Victor Wembanyama in theaters, I'm buying.
And then Frankenstein and Me. How has Frankenstein doing as a franchise?
There's a movie called Frankenstein and Me.
Frankenstein and Me came out in 1996, and there's been hundreds of Frankenstein movies, so how are we doing right now?
I would say great. I'm buying. I think Frankenstein is one of the coolest stories ever written. So weird guy makes a monster and within 2 seconds is like, I hate this forever, and runs away from it. That just always have legs.
I'm selling. We had a Frankenstein movie this year, and
Lisa
it flopped.
Frankenstein?
So I don't know how many good ones there's been except for like the first 2.
The Munsters, which we're not even going to talk about. The Munsters, Scary Little Christmas was the Munsters movie that came out in 1996. We're not talking about them. Mission Impossible, 1996, came out.
This one's hard. So Dead Reckoning Part 1 is considered a flop, and some people are blaming the fact that it had Part 1 in its title, so they're dropping Part 2 from the next one, hoping that I am buying because to have a name that everybody knows, but is so flexible in that you can sort of
nebulous.
just do whatever you want in the action movie. I think I'm going to buy.
Here's why I'm buying. Dead Reckoning 1 actually is Tom Cruise.
Wow, these spies!
Reckoning with the fact that he's actually getting older, which I feel like he has completely denied up until this point. But like, obviously, if you see him in public now, he looks different. He's a very different looking man, and there's certain angles you can shoot him from where he looks the same, and they do that in a lot of these movies. But Dead Reckoning, I was so surprised. It's about how he's getting too old for this shit and how he has to help train a new generation and how they're too jumpy and they're not quite ready just yet, but he can't do it anymore. And that made me think, okay, this thing does have legs, because if he's going to become the Alec Baldwin character and be sort of more the man behind the desk rather than the man on the outside of the plane, I think that could be an interesting new generation of the movies.
But he
As
still
long as
has
it's
to
not
jump out.
Jeremy Renner.
Yeah, and I just want to shout out to all studios when we do State of the Franchise. This is to the Mission Impossible franchise, the Bourne franchise, the Hawkeye franchise. Just don't make it Jeremy Renner, and you'll probably be fine. Make it Haley
The Snowplow
Eisenberg.
franchise. Too soon?
Too soon.
Honestly, there should only be one Jeremy Renner property, and that is the Renner app, your official app
Renner
for all
app.
things
Renner
Jeremy
app.
Renner.
I can't believe how often I listened. Not how often. How many times. It was one day that I decided to give myself hell and listen to his album. COVID was a weird time, guys.
COVID was a weird time.
You sonically cut yourself just to feel something.
Do you guys ever reflect on how few memories you have from the COVID times? Like how erased?
I wore a big sweater robe a lot. That's what I remember most.
like the dude from The Big Lebowski?
Maybe, but it was like a grandma sweater, dude robe length.
There's like a certain time of the day. It's afternoon. Maybe you can get all the way to 1 or 2, where if you're still wearing the robe that you were wearing before noon, you're like, I'm a piece of fat shit.
Yeah. There's just no way to feel okay about yourself.
Yeah.
When did a drink and a Ben and Jerry's show up in my hands?
And yet, if you have that same exact day, and the only difference is you put on underwear and pants, you're like, I'm fine. I'm a human.
You took a single shower and you're like, I'm on top of the world.
All right, we're going to reflect on our decisions during this, the quickest of breaks. My tasty buds, this is our third Forman across 3 decades, with 3, maybe 4 protagonists, depending on how you count. Are we starting to see what he's interested in? And is he just fascinated by unlikable people?
Yeah, dirtbag chic. I think he likes that sort of intersection between a person who is like personally, like not even morally repugnant, although I think that's like what they key in on with Larry Flynt, but like someone who just is weird, someone who just sticks out, someone who is just really unusual, but then also exceptionally famous, and like what that combination of sort of reviled and very famous at the same time, what that means.
And I think that's what might make one. Are we doing One Flew or Cuckoo's Nest?
I like to say One Flew.
Okay, I think that's what makes One Flew probably his most successful movie, filmmaking wise, because Randall is an outcast in the asylum and outside of the asylum, right? Like he got put there because he wasn't socially fit, but also doesn't fit in this way as well. For some reason, I read more interviews with him about Larry Flynt than I did when we did Amadeus or One Flew. And what the thing that kept coming up, because they're probably just like, there was one interview done and then everybody just aggregates, is that he knows that these people in where he comes from, Czechoslovakia, would be not just put in jail, but like disappeared if you ever acted like any of the people that he's interested in. And
that makes so much sense.
And he feels bad that he did not, like he was too cowardly to step up and defend people that deserved it in his homeland, but he comes here and he can turn anti-heroes or even villains into heroes and not agree with any of their actions, but disagree with the punishments that people want for them, you know? And then that makes any like filmmaking style that we should get to, we should, but that makes Larry Flynt line up exactly with the other 2 movies we've done.
Yeah. And you don't get what you deserve in this world for your righteous moral actions or your big crimes. That's not really... The world pretends that's what you get rewarded for. Honestly, you get rewarded for or punished for your personality, whether or not people like you as a person. If people like you as a person, it's fun when you flout convention. If people dislike you as a person, it's a crime if you flout convention. They basically perverted justice to get this pervert. And it had to go all the way up to the Supreme Court before finally somebody was like, no, you're punishing him because he's a piece of shit. And he is, but like you have to find a law thing. You can't just have it be that he's so annoying and he's wearing an American flag diaper and throwing oranges. Like it has to be something more material than that. But most of life is you get punished if people don't like you. That's just how it works.
In the meantime, I've had a lot of thoughts about the Christian portion of this movie. It's a wildly edited movie. Sometimes it does feel like, we've talked about where scenes end before they're over, almost like you're flipping channels through his life. And I feel like there are times when I watch this movie where the Christian portion could come out. But it's so important to the hypocrisy that this country has decided, despite separation of church and state, that if you do claim Christian values, you can literally do whatever you want and never get in trouble. But if you put the bad stuff in the forefront, or like the stuff that Christians are opposed to in the foreground, it doesn't matter who you are in the background.
It's the whole politicians have to wear an American flag because if they don't, people will freak out. Like, we want the stupid symbol we know doesn't mean anything, or else we're going to cry because we don't see the stupid symbol that we know doesn't mean anything. So just say, as a Christian, even though we all know that everything else is going to come after you is fucking bullshit. Stupid country.
There was just the 4th day of the DNC, and Kamala Harris gave her acceptance speech. And among the
she did accept?
She did accept.
She's like, you know what? Not for me, Doug.
There was a lot of buildup. She's like, for me, for Doug, for all of America, for everybody. Thank you. No, thank you. Good night, everybody. But I was surprised by how much the talk was dedicated to how she dressed. Mm-hmm. And it was because of the iconography of what color is she going to wear. Is she going to wear white like the suffragettes, like Hillary Clinton did in 2016? Is she going to wear a solid blue suit to show that she's for the Dems? And then she wore black on black, and people were like, ooh, that's very interesting, because they were so much more interested in that highly symbolic gesture, or they were almost as interested in that highly symbolic gesture as they were in what she said about what her plan was to govern.
Policy is hard and boring to talk about for people And so but that dress black, everybody gets.
She did, however, we have to be clear, wear a tan suit on the first night, and for that, she should already be impeached.
They did, and people didn't do the whole like big like conversation about it, but they did note it. They're like, "Oh, tan suit." I also heard recently that she's 5'4", and they're like, "That's rare for a politician to be that short." I was like, "Okay, guys." We're talking about a bunch of really
that is some
weird
1700 or which is real bullshit. Can we trust the shorties?
At the end of the acceptance speech, she did say God 3 times. God bless you, God bless soldiers, God bless America, God bless everything. And I have no idea what her church-going life is. I just know what it would have been like if she hadn't said that. You know?
Yeah.
That's the big thing. And there's so much of this where according to the movie, I'm not going to speak about the real Larry Flynt, but according to Woody and Milos's portrayal, he came from a backwards place and sort of lived a backwards life according to
America. We should say that it's America that he's talking about.
Yes, and right there, like he's fucked. And there's this thing where you push, and we see this with this is a thing with all generations. When you keep pushing me for the things that aren't legal, like I don't have to do that, but I should. Then there's a certain type of person who's just like, fuck you then. And I think that Milos is so interested in that.
And I want to move on to like the filmic style of Milos. But before that, Greg, you brought it up a little, but like it's not so much as Cuckoo's Nest. I'm a liar. I said one flew first. That's got to get your goat. Between Amadeus and this, is he saying anything about the intersection of fame and likability? Because do people love Mozart? Is he so undeniable that they had to like him?
I think that in both movies there is a weird anti-likability that half the people like you and half the people hate you. I think that Larry Flynt in this is portrayed as a hero to a lot of people, but then also like antagonizing a lot of people, and how that sort of, if you have the infamy and the fame at the same time, if you've got that notoriety in addition to your success, that those two things are like a brew that when combined makes you like take off. Because then everybody, they used to say of Howard Stern, half the people listen to him to hear what he's going to say next happily, and half of them listen to hear what he's going to say next to be upset about it. And it's when you have both of those camps that it vaults you even farther up into the stratosphere.
And that is a thing that you can take across all 3 movies. The other thing too is that he spends so much time with all 3 or 4 of his main characters across these 3 movies, with them in their element and out of their element. And when Amadeus Mozart walks in and has that laugh, like in the first scene where he's introduced to Jeffrey Jones, like they all look around like, holy shit, what is this? And the way that Nurse Ratched looks at Randall, or how people in the church that aren't Rose Carter, whatever her name is, look at Larry like this is him out of his element, and we have no choice but to look down on them. But we grow to love the characters because we see them in their element and who they truly are, and that's what Milos is, I think, so fascinated in.
Yeah, I think there is something fascinating about an unlikable person who is still loved, right? And that, like, what are you really judging this person for? Is it their laugh? Is it their upbringing? Or is it these other things that you're sort of pretending that it is? Because if we were to dispense with the judgment of people and accept them for their flaws, we could find these unlovable people lovable. But maybe we would also, find them less interesting in a way. Maybe they'd be less interesting to the public if the average person couldn't find something to hate in them.
I know he's been dead for 6 years, but like based on what we're all saying, do I have a Milos Forman biopic in me? Like,
ooh,
don't you think this would be a hit movie?
Starring and directed by Ryan R. Ryanson.
I do think it would be interesting to start in Czechoslovakia with people being disappeared and him feeling like a coward. I mean, that is like a very interesting idea where you meet authority and then something inside you gives and you have to confront your own cowardice and then to spend the rest of your life trying to like redeem those people you didn't stand up for. It's an interesting story, I think.
And I think we saw that throughout Elia Kazan's career, but you guys definitely misunderstood. I'm saying if Milos Forman was still alive, based on his protagonist, wouldn't I be a good subject for a biopic?
No.
Okay.
Well, no, you're pretty milquetoast.
Let's agree to disagree then, which is something that I do all the time because I'm crazy.
Move on. for that. Let's move on to Milos as a stylist. What is, we've done 3 now, and I know he has so many more, but these feel like the big 3, right? We're not. Are we missing any other heavy hitters in his career?
Honestly, I couldn't tell you. 4 would be Man in the Moon, which is again later than all of these 3.
Right, which is my Milos introduction. Which once I realized, I was like, oh, weird. I've only seen Courtney Love in one of the movie, and then when it clicked that it was him, I was like, oh, he just jived with her. And Kaufman definitely is in this vein of like, let's look at this person whose whole career is built on pissing people off.
Yeah, just hated. Hair would be probably number 5. The movie.
Hair. I can't do Hair again.
The most notable thing in this to me is, we've talked about it a couple times, but is the way he's able to move through these 35 years by just moving through scenes and like linking up moments in the life that don't necessarily run together, but that work together really filmically. So there's a part where Althea's like talking to Larry early on, and she reveals that she is bisexual. And this is a very 90s thing. Like, we were in the 90s, we were like just starting to get really into the idea. I feel like culturally we were like pretty obsessed with lesbianism, and maybe even more than lesbianism, like bisexuality exclusively in females. Like, we were not interested in male bisexuality at all, but we loved the idea of women as bisexual, and it was still very provocative, I would say, and it was usually employed in provocative ways. And so when she
fully
says this,
for the men.
Yeah, when she says this, and for some of the ladies, let's face it, and when she reveals that, it cuts to a different scene where a trucker recognizes Larry at a diner, and he suddenly like cranes his head around really fast. But it looks like, in the filmic language, it looks like he's responding to her saying that she sleeps with women. But really, it's a cut to a different scene. And that's exactly the way he finds very clever ways to like make these cuts feel extremely organic, even though, honestly, they're kind of jarring, because now we've moved to a completely different scene, a completely different location. There's no establishing shot, but it works because the scenes rhyme. You know, it makes one consecutive sort of like emotional arc, and that works for the viewer. He's telling his story, the life of this person or these 2 people, but he's also telling his story of like what I got out of it and what I want you to get out of it. And sometimes, or always, sometimes that's in the forefront, but always they work hand in hand. And so you might just be watching this movie to see what crazy thing Larry does, or who's going to take their clothes off, or what's going to be sexy. But like, he is always getting that thing in, and I think that the themes of Cuckoo's Nest and Amadeus are like sort of like that surface level and easy to grasp, and yet nobody ever says them out loud. The other thing that I think too, when I compare this,
wait, can you break that down? Where you're saying the themes are as easy to grasp, but nobody says them. What themes?
Like, I mean, aside from like the court cases where they literally have to state how we're against or they're against the First Amendment or whatever, you are watching all of this despicableness with Larry or Randall or Salieri, I'll use here, with those 3, and yet you're never hating them or misunderstanding what Milos is trying to say about them.
Gotcha.
Like, you always know, without a ton of like flashbacks, a little bit, but not a ton of flashbacks or anything, like where they're coming from. You know,
because of the steady directorial.
Exactly, and I think that's the thing too with Goodfellas and Boogie Nights and the movies in this style, is that no scene is going to be boring. And I think that it sounds stupid, like why would any scene be boring? But I think that when we talk about these shitty biopics like Bohemian Rhapsody, is that so many of them are. Like, when they do the cradle to the grave, you can do that. That it's legal to do that. It's just people do it poorly. And it's so boring almost all of the time until somebody says, wow, what is that? What kind of Rhapsody is that? Is that Bohemian? And then Freddie Mercury looks up and he's like, I have an idea. Speed round.
Why start with the childhood moonshining? We get only this, nothing else about him as a kid. Why start here?
It's I think it shows a lot of things about him. One, he's a vice peddler, but also it shows how responsible he's had to be from the time he was a little kid. He's running a business. He's like in charge of his brother and basically kind of runs his household. He has to like try to keep the fortune away from his dad. He's like a weird Ozark child star in this or something. He's like the profit
please
center for his
greenlight that
parents.
show. Weird Ozark child star. I will watch. Also, like to that point in his life, he has one. I mean, it shows like how dirty he is and moonshine and all that. But to that point in his life, he has had one authority figure, and he threw a fucking pot right at its head. Like whoever is authoritative around me, you better duck.
We have Ryan. You talked about we hate cradle to the grave biopics, and then we've talked about at the beginning of the show that the society's moved away from that. They're like, let's do this 1 week, but they're still terrible. So what elevates this? Is it Forman's style and deft hand, or is it also that he's not trying to aggrandize his subjects? He is just shelling a story, and it is more nuanced than, wasn't that band great? Yeah, they helped me produce this one, but isn't that band great?
I mean, I think that the difference between all we've talked about with Milos is like who he's interested in, and you get the Johnny Cash story, or you get the Ray Charles story, or you get the Queen story, and you're just like, well, this story has to be told.
Cox.
I don't know why we have to tell it. Amy Winehouse recently, I didn't see it, but like I heard it was terrible, and it's because it's just like you're filming the Wikipedia. There's a lot of shit talking to be done on what Milos cut, right? But if you were more gracious to him, you would say he cut it because he had a story to tell, regardless of what Larry Flynt did, and I think that's clear the entire time.
Yeah, if you are watching this as a historical text, then at this point
you might be a redneck.
You might just be a redneck. I think the part of there's a formula that makes this movie interesting, and that it is it's about sex, and there's a fair amount of nudity in it, and it's a courtroom drama, and then it's Milos and his roller coaster cuts, where like characters say lines that most movies would sit on for a while because they are emotionally devastating. They are very important to the plot, and Milos is like, as soon as the last syllable of the word is out of their mouth, he just moves on. I can't believe like what he moves on from, and because I think he's right to say that there's nothing else. That's it. That's the important part. We don't have to watch the characters nod after that line is said, and then steeple their fingers and stuff like that. But like maybe the most important line in the movie is, "I just want to be remembered for something important." The cut after that is so abrupt, like. That seems to be the entire movie. This has been a huge change for this guy, or it's a huge lie that he's telling because he's just trying to manipulate this guy one more time, and it's effective. Either way, you would expect it to breathe a little bit. We don't have time. We're moving on.
No breaths.
But I totally agree with you. But he might cut the 10th most important moment of Larry or Salieri or Mozart's life. He might cut the 10th most important part of Ken Casey's book, just to let his stars cook for a minute, because he thinks that's important too, like the Larry's on the phone with Rose scene. That's more important than some other factoid. And I think that's also what we're not getting from Walk the Line, Ray, all the movies that don't include Dewey Cox. I want to say that is a flawless film.
Larry and Althea, a couple of goals or just a couple of trolls?
I say couple goals. For as messed up as they are and as terrible as their lives are, I love the idea that you'd have a partner that's something between Harley Quinn and Salacious Crumb, and like it's just like in the middle of a meeting, she's just lounging on the table as if she's his lap cat or something. Like, and then much again like a cat, he's on the phone and she's basically just swatting at his face with a lit cigarette.
Because it's funny, and she, antagonizes too. It's just that she sort of has a different goal, and that is Larry. Like there's a lot of this movie that I never realized is that often when Althea is talking to Larry, she sort of gets down on her knees and looks up at him. Like that's ridiculous. You have this God, Larry. Why are you into Jesus now? As she gets down on his knees and does that same thing to him. And I guess that's couple goals.
Perfect time. Does this movie shine on religion as an Act 2 dalliance, or does it remain with us throughout the film?
I think it is always there. His buy-into is short-lived and out of nowhere, but you had to go through that to get the rest of the movie, where it's like, I now have the ultimate authority to rebel against, and that is also, fucking God.
We kind of see him do the same con, right? Like, I mean, there's so many people in his life are like, are you just so I know, Larry, like this is like a weird joke, right? This is like meta commentary on being saved. And the movie doesn't quite land on whether or not that is the case or not. He certainly drops it after he gets shot. But I think it's a very interesting look at, like, aren't we, like, yeah, I'm doing this as part of the hustle. Isn't everybody who is famously Christian, like, they've made being Christian the basis of their fame and wealth? Isn't that gross? Aren't they just hustlers? Aren't they just
Was Larry Flynt the hustler the whole time?
He's been hustling, Ryan.
Greg, I'm glad you emphasized that way, because that was Mike. You owe me a point for that. I can see you're doing some notes, and I need you to notice.
That is literally what happened. I was like, normally I would get a point for this, and I can tell he's kind of thinking about something else, so I went for it.
No, I appreciate it. This time, tread lightly.
Yeah. It's always a wild
Watch yourself,
card, right?
counselor.
How many fucking sides does Ruth Carter Stapleton have at every dinner? Is it just always Thanksgiving at this lady's house?
Oh my God, she has like 12 servants, and you would think, like, you know what? I'm good with like corn and mashed potatoes. There's 17 more chafing dishes brought around.
Points for chafing dishes, right?
That's what I call my balls.
Not off used enough. The American flag is used a lot in this movie in a lot of different ways. Does it feel different than it used to see that?
We talked about this on the show before, but like how we live in a time where if you have a flag outside your house, you're now the enemy, which I do think post DNC is changing. But, you know, he only uses it to his benefit, you know, whether that's to welcome everybody to his Gatsby-like 4th of July bicentennial party or wrap it around his butt and wiener. And I sort of think that like we have that today, too. It's just everybody's like, do I hug it? Do I, you know, just wear it on the lapel, like
give a little smooch.
Yeah, how's it going to best suit me today?
Again, I mean, he dons it like the vestments of religion that he does too, which is a kind of, I think, meta commentary about like, isn't this always a hustle when people do this? No, I'm not trying to get points again. But like,
no, hustle's a key word now for you.
Yeah. Hustle. Oh, now I'm just Pavlovian. Anybody says hustle, I heard my neighbors scream, "Stop hustling me!" I gave Greg a point.
But you know so like he goes to give a big speech about how important pornography is at like this convention that he himself has thrown, and he stands up in front of this huge screen with a waving American flag on it, and it's like when he does that, it's gross in the same way that almost everybody is just using this thing that is supposed to be kind of like sanctified as a political prop,
and that's on both sides. And also like this is metatextual because I didn't get this necessarily from the movie, but reading the Milos interviews is like, you guys come from a country where you can just do this, like whatever you want to this flag and like take it for granted, you know?
And do you understand, that you are allowed to do this and what that means that you're allowed to do this?
And the answer is no.
Nope.
Yeah.
Well, we know what that means when you jinx the host. This is an early Ed Norton movie that is easy to forget. It's an Ed Norton movie. What are we getting from him from this?
We're not doing Primal Fear either, are we?
No.
I know, which is kind of a shame.
And
we're not getting some of the same moves from very different characters. We're getting some of the same moves.
To have both of these performances in the same year is crazy. And we're not getting the first Hulk movie or Universal's Hulk movie, which came out like 15 years after this.
I mean, we might try.
I think that he arguably has one of the harder jobs because there's nothing to chew on, but scripted from real life lines, you know?
Yeah.
Woody and Courtney could improvise, you know, like we all have the theory that like they were just like, you know, cooking in there, and he is just he has to be this guy, and for him to like up front say I'm gonna make or ruin my career from this, but that's what's exciting. Like I can't do the drugs, I can't have sex with the women, but for a geeky lawyer, this is fascinating. I think he does an incredible job.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed with his performance. I feel like Eddie Nortz is like hit or miss, and it's like either a home run or, you know, strikes out looking. It's like he either does it or fails significantly. And I think in this one, it's an amazing performance. Having to deliver actual transcripts like from court, that is not an easy thing to do because usually the lines that actors have to deliver are very, very different than actual
crafted.
Yeah. But for me, the actual scene that does it is when Larry is trying to get him to come back and like one last ride. Let's go to the Supreme Court. And he's like, Larry, no, I am rejecting you. And then Larry starts giving him this speech about how he has to come back. And Ed Norton gives his really evil primal fear eyes, like looking up, kind of like the Shining, the Kubrick look. And he's got murder in his eyes. He's got legitimate murder in his eyes. And yet he softens and actually does it because that's how good Larry Flynt is. And the amount of terrain that Ed Norton's able to cover in that scene, I thought was very impressive.
There's a part in the Supreme Court part where he drops a word. Like he says straight up the wrong word.
Yeah.
That would be a blooper, essentially. And maybe that was in the transcript. I don't know. Like maybe the real lawyer did that, or maybe he just kept rolling and it just worked so well as like
it was great.
I am maybe I don't belong here, but I'm trying to make it seem like I do, so I'm rolling through it, and it was absolutely incredible.
We have 2 more questions in speed round. If your story is being told in a film, should you just be allowed to play a judge even if the story of your life never enters a courtroom or has anything to do with the law?
Like in Milos Forman's movie about me, I should be a judge.
Yeah.
Right?
You should probably just play a judge even though you've never met a judge.
Yeah, judge is always the role that they just put anybody into. They're like, yeah, judge. Judge just has to say a few things and bang the gavel.
For those of you who aren't IMDb right now or Wikipedia as you're listening, and thank you for putting your 100% focus on listening to this podcast in your
and driving.
Larry Flynt plays a judge in this movie. Was that jarring? Did you have to look that up? Did you already know?
No, I already knew.
Why
but
is this guy so bad?
You could tell because no judge has used fewer words in each sentence than
No.
It's just a dueling Bane set for a second, even though that's before Woody's Bane.
He runs all his lines together. It's honestly, I think you have to get to the end.
I thought
of
Judge
that.
was nervous.
You have to look at it and be like, okay, it's fun to have this guy be in his own biopic, but this didn't work. Like it sticks out. It's such everyone that plays a judge in this. It's like, okay, who is this in real life? Why are we listening to this non-actor?
They're all porn guys. That's every judge is a porn guy.
They just went to the Valley and said, "Who needs a job?" We went over this before, but like with Larry Flynt and with the Supreme Court, I really think that this movie was just made in a naive time where they thought that like judges were cool.
There's no more naive time than 1996, I think.
What fruit or other type of food would you throw at a judge?
Banana. That way, if it misses, it comes back to you.
Hell yeah, that's a great answer.
I would do pie, but not movie pie, which is often, I don't know if you noticed, a tin full of whipped cream.
Yeah,
that's true.
I want a full-on chocolate cream all built up all the way.
Crust. Let the crust scratch the corneas.
Which, man, I don't know if you guys know, I don't believe in clutch, but I believe in the opposite of clutch, which is me. And if I had the chance to throw a pie at somebody, it would miss so bad. Like, I would go to jail for, like, lack of athleticism.
We are going to take the last of the quickest of breaks. And when we come back, it's award season. Taste buds, it is time to give out some awards. And normally we're like, did you know that this won this many Oscars? Or that the Oscars... I don't give a shit what the Oscars does anymore. We're never going to talk about them, except when I give this speech every time. And no, that's not just a cover that I forgot to look up how many Oscars this movie won.
Did you know they wouldn't invite Larry Flynt to the Oscars, so Woody Harrelson took him as his +1?
Good.
Oscar facts.
Oscar facts. Let's start with one of the seasonal awards. The musical moment of The People versus Larry Flynt. Greg?
Honestly, a little spoiled for choice here. There's a lot of good selections, and some of them a little ballsy. But I think I'm going to go with my favorite part of the movie. I'm a big fan of the first half of these Vice movies. When people are, specifically if it has to do with like sex or porn or something, because the first half is a fucking party. And it's like, why don't people live like this? And it's like, stay tuned, because in about 10 minutes, things are about to get so bleak. But 1976, 4th of July, the cut from Larry he's just been crowned a millionaire, and then it cuts to this 4th of July party, 1976, and the national anthem is playing, and he's like walking and pretending to drum, and he's like in full Revolutionary War regalia, and the national anthem just bops during this scene, and everything is going perfectly, and the fireworks are going off in the sky, and his parents show up, and he's just about to have a wicked orgy, and honestly, at that moment, both the viewer and the character are like, things are never going to get bad.
Nothing
things
bad
are
will
continue
ever
this good forever.
Ryan, what is yours?
The juxtaposition, though, of like $1 million made, $1 million spent.
Yeah.
Is perfect. Also, is National Anthem one of the few songs that is better without a singer?
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
Like those musical parts rip, and then some singers
Yeah.
like ruining notes all over the place.
Sick. Shut up.
Mine is a song that I had already attributed to a different movie, which was Wayne's World, when Wayne looks at Tia Carrere. But I think that Althea is taking over Tia Carrere with the song Dreamweaver, which the movie's bookended with towards the beginning when he first sees her, but also when he's watching the VHS or maybe beta tape at the end of her taking her clothes off. Dreamweaver is just the perfect song there.
Such a
Gary
beta
Wright.
tape.
Mike, can I do an honorable mention?
Sure.
Because I mentioned that I thought that there was like a kind of wicked choice for song. The scene that begins with Althea's death, or the scene that will eventually become Althea's death, she's laying on the bed and she looks like so awful. But how that scene starts is watching a cartoon of Betty Boop, and she's singing, "I'm young and healthy, I'm young and healthy." Wow, what an FU! That is such an interesting choice.
That is good.
Again, nothing bad will ever happen to us. Did you guys read the real story of what happened that night Althea died?
No.
Althea went to take a bath. He picked up his phone and called the nurse. Come in and something might be wrong. Check on her. Nurse ran up. She was drowned. Ran back in. Larry Flynt was asleep.
Classic.
Didn't save her.
We're giving the musical moment to Dream Weaver for the emotional heft. The bookends. Next up is 90s slang, and this movie took place sort of sometimes, maybe not even yet in the 90s,
Nope.
but 35 years, none of it 90s. Let's do it, Ryan.
As hard as it was, because everybody was like groovy, hip, Volkswagen, bus, weed, smoke. There was one part where I know that we came up with this in the 90s, and they stole it from us and used it in this movie. It's when they call him Jerry Fartwell, and they refuse to say anything else. That's 90s as hell, baby.
That's Bart Simpson energy. Greg, what's yours?
I'm going to go with how often people said porn. To my memory, porn as a term started really more like with the internet. Before that, it was like porno or pornos. I think the very short form of porn, although probably you could find references to it, I think that is much more 90s than like the 80s or 70s.
And a little help for our audience, the shortest hand is corn. If you see corn, you click on that lady's bio.
Corn is porn?
If you see the
when
corn
they say,
emoji.
When they say, the little corn, that
I
means
thought they
they're
were
talking
on to
about
that corn kid. Gets that one. Next up is cringiest moment. In a movie about a depraved sex pervert who openly embraces being a declared sex pervert? Greg, what is it?
He's a declared sex pervert. I'm going to go, there's so many choices, right? But something that seemed so real to me, because it's like actual real video or, news footage from back in the day, was the Jackie O when they published the pictures of someone who is probably not Jackie O in Hustler. And then on camera, the Ohio governor is caught buying the issue, and he says, "I've always been a fan of first ladies." Dude.
What
and he's
the
like,
fuck?
Yeah, it's just all of that is just so awful. We all have to think about how he is buying this magazine to look at naked pictures of supposedly Jackie O, and he's this old round man.
That she was not into. She did not sell her pose, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's not getting this from her own OnlyFans in an ethical way. No, he is buying this from some sort of smut stand, and just his like smarmy, like not being in bed. I don't know.
I know I can get away with anything stance.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And he's going to go home and Jackie oaf.
I know. That's the worst part.
Ryan.
I wanted so much to just say Antonin Scalia in general. Like, just him
hearing
being
his
here.
name, seeing the
Yeah.
actor look like him, yeah.
And like, he has like two lines and they're both so jovial. But I'm going to pick out something that's very 96 of it all. The 96 of it all. And they say... Larry has to decide, like, well, Cincinnati is not for me anymore, so I have to go to the most perverted land of all time. and it cuts to Griffith Park, which
the observatory. That's where all the perverts hang out.
And then the Hollywood sign, and then feed up almost Saturday Night Fever style of a woman in a dress, and it's a man, and that's like, this is how perverted Los Angeles is.
Can I say she's fucking killing it though? She looks good as hell. Like she looks happy. She's walking her little dog.
But it's montage hackiness, you know.
Every other moment felt like if you cringe, Milos wants you to, and that got me. Where like I jaw dropped of how like open, like, did you know this would be a award 30 years later? And that's what you're doing right now. This is absurdly on the nose cringe. Ryan, you get that one. Pound for pound performance. Right guy.
I'm gonna do Edward Norton. As much as we've talked about Courtney Love and like Woody Harrelson already won Best Actor, don't have to do that at the end of the year, end of the season. Courtney Love is amazing, but the amount of screen time that he has, and he's gone for like a solid 45 minutes at a time. All he is given is speechifying. And when we talk about the Woody Harrelsons and Philip Seymour Hoffmans, and I know I have one of those examples in this movie, but like, here's what you have, do what you will. This in Primal Fear sort of created that legend of him being like, no, I got it. I'm just going to act my balls off while being subtle. I think it's very impressive.
I'm from the school of, wait, Eddie Nortz is in this movie? And then by the end of it being like, oh, Eddie Nortz was this movie. That is also my pick. Woody Harrelson's amazing, but he's on the screen nonstop. Courtney Love, I think, does a good job and is interesting in it. Edward Norton makes this movie.
Yeah.
If it were not for him, we wouldn't have enough of that like balance to understand that you can be a member of society and still not want to punish Larry Flynt. That you can be both things. You know, you don't have to accept him, you don't have to like him, but you don't think it's right to just completely railroad him. And at the same time, he does so great in that scene where he like puts up a boundary and he's like, "No, Larry, you have betrayed me too many times, and I will never help you again. And there's nothing you can say." And then Larry Flynt's like, "Okay, I've been saving this, so how about this? You're my friend, and I love the First Amendment." And he's like, "You know what? Let's do it, Larry. I do love you."
He's showing, I know I'm being manipulated, and I know you're being truthful all at the same time. Yes. He's a great subtle actor.
And his whole like, the movie really does a good job without saying it too much. They talk about it a little bit, but without saying it too much, the movie does a great job of portraying how excited a fucking lawyer is to get to argue a case in front of the Supreme Court. And the idea that he would deny himself that ability, but then when he agrees to do it, how like smitten he is with the experience. And then he wins 9-0. And he's like, he's like a little kid. He's so elated.
Yeah. And I'm like, the whole Larry Flynt real life of it all, but also lawyers in real life, right? Like they did it for the money, straight up. But this movie convinces you, like, no,
they just love the First Amendment.
Yeah,
lawyers would never do anything bad, and I think that's important.
Director's signature moment, and we've seen his only 3 movies that matter. And I've used to own Man on the Moon, so we are the experts here. Greg.
I'm going to go with the thing I referenced earlier, which is this movie. The most notable feature of this movie is the way in which it moves through time very quickly and doesn't like spend a lot of time orienting us. It gives us enough that we need to know. And so it's when Althea says, "I've also slept with every woman in this club," and then a trucker in a completely different scene in a completely different location suddenly like goes, "What?" and like turns his head around, and then that transition has worked for us, and now we are into the next part of it, and we haven't needed a lot to connect us to that, from one scene to the next, because emotionally it works. And I just thought that was very emblematic of how he moves quickly through long periods of time.
That scene also proves that truckers, after they take a shit in the bathroom, will jerk off. They are looking for things to jerk off to.
Truckers are the most disgusting people that we have, and this movie proves that that's fine, but it is just true.
That Althea line, too, is a for your consideration Woody moment, because he finds out that she's banging every girl just like he is, and he's so like pissed and jealous and turned on all at the same time in like 1 second.
What is your moment?
It's got to be the Ruth Carter Ginsburg phone call of Courtney and Woody just like antagonizing each other. I just think like the fact that I think that if you watch this movie, it's so clear that 1 billion hours were left on the cutting room floor. Mm-hmm. You
Yes.
know, like
Oh my gosh, yes.
there were so many scenes or parts of scenes that he just said, no, we're ruining the flow.
Right.
But for that to be in makes the flow. Like that's what the flow is all about.
I think that like he threw out the entire script for the jacuzzi scene and just went with what they said in the room that day. And I think specifically with the two of them, there's times where he just chucked the script and just said like, no, this isn't working. Just talk to each other about this stuff.
The only scene that doesn't feel like that is I'm going to quit drugs now because I'm out of pain.
Yeah.
Like, that's so exposition scripted. Every other scene feels natural as hell.
That
I think
also
Courtney
went from the
Love is great.
transcript.
I think Courtney Love is great in that scene because as a avid drug user, she's bringing a lot of incredulity that's very real. Like, so you've been doing drugs for 4 to 5 years, and now you are going to just suddenly stop
and judge the shit out of me.
Right.
Yeah, and she's like, Larry, you're gonna get fucked up, man. Like, you can't just, it's mentally and physically will fuck you up to do this. And he's like, no, I'm just gonna pretend like that doesn't happen. And the movie kind of does, even though Courtney Love is like, just so everybody knows, that's not how it works.
Also, he died of a drug overdose, so
Larry?
he did not. Yeah, he did not quit doing drugs in real life.
You're killing me, Larry!
I would say very clearly the character is high the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
And his lawyer keeps saying it. This guy's high. And you can just tell that it seems like he's high.
No, I said I quit. We're giving that one to Greg. And now, finally, your recommendation. If you liked The People versus Larry Flynt, or you wanted to like The People versus Larry Flynt, what else would you like? Ryan?
I didn't want to do the Goodfellas Boogie Nights genre. I don't think this fits in. So what I picked was like what might be a promising director's. It's going to turn out to maybe be his only good movie, and that is Good Night and Good Luck, which it's been a while since I've seen it. But to take not just the past, but through your thick director's vision of what you hope the past was, and what you hope, not Aaron Sorkin bad, but one step removed from that, and just tell these stories of these heroic people who did whatever it took in a very stylistic way. You know, I think that's important too, is that it's not just it's cradle or grave, here's the Wikipedia, but like I think that this is like when he really shined as a director, and I do think it's a fantastic movie.
And he is George Clooney for the
He's George
listeners at home.
Clooney, yeah. I haven't seen a George Clooney movie. They keep coming out on like Netflix.
Do they?
I have not been watching them.
He's not a movie star anymore. Trump pointed that out.
He's an espresso salesman. We get to hang out in a month, me and Georgie. Greg, what's yours?
Movies love the whole courtroom aesthetic. It's so much drama in real life. You know, it's a setting, and there's costumes, and everybody has a part that they play in it. And so I was like really caught up in like the majesty of the courtroom drama in this, and it reminded me of a skit from Saturday Night Live that I think is kind of forgotten. It comes from the heyday of Saturday Night Live. I think we all agree, which is the early 90s. It's a Phil Hartman character, but I think that this is a less known character, and it's Unfrozen Caveman Lawyer.
Fuck you.
I think this is the most fun character of all time, and basically this is how it works. It's kind of only one move, but I love the move, which is this is a caveman. He fell in some ice 100,000 years ago. He froze. Our scientists thawed him out, and then he studied law to become a lawyer. And he does the whole version of the I'm not a big city lawyer thing, but instead he goes, I'm just a caveman. I fell in some ice, and I was thawed out by your scientist, and now I study law. I don't understand the modern world. It scares me. What are these voices coming out of my cell phone? Are they demons? I don't know. But what I do know is that if you slip and fall in front of an establishment, you are entitled to $2 million in compensatory damages and $2 million in liability damages. It like uses this tension of him talking about being a caveman and then like his very slick lawyerly presentation. And I just find it so delightful. And I find that it really like hits on all those same notes of loving the courtroom drama, and just kind of the absurdity of like, you know, well, I'm just a simple man. I don't know how this works.
My rec also leans that it's not courtroom, but it is a lot of arbitration. And it is also, look at this very infamous figure. Oh, no, the real stuff is so much worse, and we don't even know it yet. It's I tipped my hand to it. It's The Social Network.
Yeah.
We had no idea. And that movie, I think, does take for a lot of biopics, a pretty harsh view on Zuckerberg. But nobody knew that it would not nearly be harsh enough. What a despicable piece of human garbage he actually is.
Made the world a noticeably worse place.
But great movie. Love the movie. We are now, truthfully, going to take our final, quickest of breaks. And when we come back, you're going to find out who wins this episode and how we think The People versus Larry Flynt will do. Taste buds, that is our show. Thank you so much for joining me this evening.
You are welcome.
You're welcome, Mike.
Okay. I didn't like either of your tones when you said you're welcome. Can I dock point? It's too far. Do you want to know who won?
No.
I bet you do.
I do.
Who will be bringing me my basket of blueberry muffins
Also,
every day this week?
New season, new rules.
Yeah.
Can we have maybe the loser bring the basket of muffins every day for a week? Doesn't that make more sense? And then the winner
It's
gets
not
to
true
enjoy the
friendship.
muffins?
I disagree with this.
All right.
Interesting.
It's an opportunity.
Thank you. To say, start your day off with your best friend. What
Yeah.
could be better than that?
Well, if it's Mike,
Exactly,
they're
the
all going to
muffin
be
guy.
Bran.
Bran, I am, I need to be more regular, so thank you.
What are you,
you-
the king? Bran the
You are
broken?
you guys are going to hate me. Good Game of Thrones reference.
Don't say Ty.
But you can trade days.
Don't you fucking say Ty.
I didn't mean to. What do I do? How do I do a tiebreaker now?
Say 3, 2, 1. What movie did we talk about tonight? And me and Greg will both sit there for like 10 seconds being like,
That's not fair.
I have no
No.
idea.
Here, 3, 2, 1. What movie are we talking about next week?
Scream.
Greg wins.
I don't-
Greg, you win.
I don't think that's true.
Yeah,
It is.
Well, technically.
It's very true. Yeah, they don't need to know our recording schedule, Ryan. I'm talking to the listeners right now like a performer.
Again, this is a day after the DNC, so just so you know when we recorded, and I'm a little messed up from the tan suit.
I like to think it was a historical nod to Obama's tan suit.
Yeah.
Did he wear one too?
This is getting so much worse.
I was only
And
pissed about
neither
hers.
of them are born here? What is going on?
What's she gonna
Well,
do next?
Greg-
Drone strike a wedding?
Greg, you are the winner. Thank you very much.
Woo!
I
did it.
For my future muffins. How do we think Larry Flynt versus the People is going to do overall? First movie of the season, guys. Big deal.
Can I answer that by asking a different question?
Is it if I actually know the order of the People versus Larry Flynt?
Which is a statement. I'm so glad that this was the first movie. To cover all the decades that aren't the 90s, but also be the most 90s movie that we might watch all year. Like, this was so perfect.
And going back to back from this movie into Scream, which is even more 90s than this.
I think it was a great start. The only thing I'm worried about is that sometimes when you're all the way back at the first movie, when it comes near the end of the season, it's hard for us to look through the fog of time and remember how good you were. But I think it's a great entrance into the year. I don't know if I think that it's going to win, but I don't think that they're like, well, I'm glad we did a show about this, but we'll never talk about this again. I think it had a lot
Right.
to offer.
Final bonus question, and bonus just means nothing. The Greg won. Rank Forman's movies, since we're not going to go do 1999 again to do Man on the Moon. We've covered Cuckoo's Nest, One Flew Over, Amadeus, and now The People versus Larry Flynt. I would like your orders each. Ryan, starting with you.
I somehow thought about this because I thought that you might ask it, and I thought that it might be that's the question that you asked for me to win, but no, it was just
Name next week's movie.
fake news.
You're fake news.
I think I'm going to go. I think that One Flew is number 1. And I think that 2 and 3 are very close. So I will go for ease and just to make this shorter. Because I know you wanted a longer answer from me than
did.
this. But I think that we'll go chronological. It's getting worse, folks. And Man on the Moon is definitely 4 out of these 4.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That's chronological order, and it's but it's very near things. Like I think there's small gaps in between 1, 2, and 3, but I would put them just in chronological order.
And what I love about it, though, and you can't say this about a lot of the old men directors, is that they are so of their time. Like Amadeus doesn't feel 70s. Larry Flynt doesn't feel 80s at all. You know, Amadeus in so many ways feels 80s. That's sort of impressive. A lot of people like
One Flew did feel very 90s, though.
They start in their decade and they stay
he was
there.
ahead of his time.
Sort of like how we dress and the music we listen to. But like I think Milos is pretty good at changing with the times.
Right. Mine I do think is Amadeus Cuckoo's Bird. By Bird, I mean all week I've said I got to watch that Larry Bird movie. And I thought I was going to get out of this episode without revealing that. But fucking down to the wire.
Just a 6-minute movie of Larry Bird being like, I don't like porn. And that's it.
I realized I didn't reveal the scores. Greg did end up with 45 points. Ryan was 44 points. Next week, as we revealed, we are talking about Scream. Until then, keep watching those movies.
It's crazy how Greg, your favorite, ended up at 45, just like your favorite president.